Veteran father and unholy daughter. Reversal of the Pièta in The Last of Us. Disclaimer: I will not put out a spoiler warning on any of my podcast essays. If you decide to listen to a podcast discussing a particular story in detail, I assume you've already acquainted yourself with said story, and therefore you will know what happened. If you did not know the story before clicking on this podcast, on your own head be it. The record for fastest to break our hearts might still be held by Pixar's Up. With Sarah's death shattering us in nigh on 30 minutes, HBO's The Last of Us definitely set the tone for the rest of the show. As a cinematic series, The Last of Us couldn't beat the crushing blow its original game dealt us. By making Sarah the playable character, it forced the player to think she at least would survive the cordyceps zombie attack. But no, she died the very first night. However, the series adapted this feature well by giving the point of view in those first 30 minutes to Sarah. We see a normal teenage girl, stickers on her bedroom wall, bickering with her lame father, who even forgets his own birthday, attending school, daydreaming while she's taught stuff she will definitely need one day, visiting the elderly neighbor, although she dislikes them and their cookies. We even stick with her while the first signs of doom seep through, falling asleep on the couch, and later wandering confused on the lawn, discovering the horror which visited the elderly neighbor as well. And then the point of view shifts abruptly. Suddenly we are with Joel, the father desperately hugging his dying daughter, not wanting to admit what we viewers already know. This image is not only powerful because of those 30 minutes of setup, not only because it doesn't happen every day that we lose a main character so soon in a show, not even after Game of Thrones, not only because she's a child. This image of the father cradling his dead daughter is so powerful because it is a direct reference to the Virgin Mary cradling the body of Jesus after his sacrifice, an image better known as the Pièta. That it is the Pièta The Last of Us is copying is made abundantly clear because there is another Pièta, its mirror image, just minutes later. The plot skips 20 years. The world is destroyed by cordyceps. Sarah has been dead for ages, although her death is still a fresh wound for us viewers, and another truck is bringing dead bodies to be fed to the fire. Although the woman can't make herself throw the child into the roaring fire, Joel is hardened by the years and his loss. He picks up the child. Notice how the camera gives you a full frontal of Joel carrying the child in his arms, and dumps it straight into the flames. It can't be made more clear. Joel has changed. Side note: Super Sam. Imagery is, by the way, a super important storytelling element throughout The Last of Us. An example is the story of Henry and Sam, the two brothers with another interesting father-child-like relationship. Henry uses Superman, or in this case Super Sam, to alleviate the Death Sam's anxiety in their quest to stay hidden and flee the city. With Sam's crayons, he draws Super Sam battling and killing the bad guys. Just before Henry and Sam have to leave their safe place, because food ran out and the guy delivering new food hasn't shown up, because the delivery guy was arrested and killed, Henry draws a red bar across Sam's eyes to symbolize Superman's, or Super Sam's, eyepiece. Literally seconds later, Henry looks out of a window to see if the coast is clear. The red name sign of the Coin Laundry, where incidentally Joel and Ellie are held up, reflects on the glass, covering Henry's eyes. A clearer image who is the real superhero here could not exist. My point being The fact that Joel holds his dying daughter and just minutes later, measured in extra-diegetic time of course, he holds another dead child is not just a nice little reference to this Pièta thing. It says something. But what? Let's find out. Not a petty image. So, what is this Pièta anyways? The most famous Pièta is made by Michelangelo. On display in the St. Peter in Vatican City, it portrays the Mother Mary holding her son in her lap. It is one of the images in the narrative of Jesus, his sacrifice. Jesus, after having sacrificed himself for humankind, is taken off the cross, an image known as the depiction, and then, in the Pièta, laid on the lap of his mother, who grieves for her son. Hence the fact that we commonly associate the word pieta with pity. It actually means, in Christian context, piety, because Mary is shown to be very pious indeed by letting her kid die for humanity. Key features of this image is its triangle of Mary's head and her stretched arms that hold the head and feet of Christ. And, of course, the fact that she is suffering horribly. Serenely or piously? In his lecture called The Pieta in Art, Lord Richard Harries tells us that the Pieta as an image emerged, and here I'm pointing my finger to indicate the significance, it emerged in Germany at the time of the plague. It shifted the images of Jesus' sacrifice from a narrative depiction, mere storytelling, to a devotional image. And it coincided with the rise of the Virgin Mary cult. So, to rephrase, the Pieta is more about the mother's, Mary's, suffering for her dead child than about Jesus and his sacrifice. This, my friends, will be significant later when we analyze Joel and Ellie's story. Moreover, the Pieta has a direct link with another image of Mary with Jesus in her lap, namely his birth. Known from the countless nativity scenes we encounter every Christmas, Mary with baby Jesus is an image we, and people in the past, are very, very used to. In the Pieta, Jesus is, as Lord Harry says, a child in her arms again. But now, I quote, that baby is dead. Birth and death as mirror images of each other. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. As Lord Harry mentions, this evocative image is oft repeated throughout art history because of, I quote, the power of the image in both form and idea, meaning the triangle and suffering. If we hadn't figured it out by the heartbreaking twist that starts the Last of Us story, artists really like playing with well-known images, twisting them and reversing them until we don't know what's up or down anymore. And this powerful image of the mother mourning her son isn't any different. Falling from the pedestal. Let's look at twisting the Pieta in another masterpiece first. James Bond's Skyfall. Skyfall is, in all its glory, a pivotal Bond movie, adding depth to both story and Bond, shaking the Bond franchise to its very core. And she is dying. M, the iconic character by the iconic actress Judi Dench. No, it's not a coincidence that we move to Bond's childhood home for this last battle, Bond becoming child again. Can we please remember that Bond's own mother's surname is Delacroix? Yes, please, thank you. No, it's not a coincidence that the villain Silva calls M mother. And no, it's also not a coincidence that they move to a church for the very last scene. And it's most definitely not a coincidence that the fire demolishing Bond's childhood home is lighting the church in a very painterly fashion. So, Bond kills Silva, last rat standing, his former fellow agent trained by M. M is wounded, below her ribs, triple exclamation point, fifth wound of Jesus Christ, falls to the ground, is caught by Bond, the prodigal son, and dies. The camera pans out, showing us that M died in the dead center of the bloody church. Puns intended. Bond, cradling her in his lap, is utterly completing the Pieta's triangle. This is the very first time ever that we see Bond cry, because it is the suffering of the survivor that is more important in the Pieta. The Pieta is reversed. It is the mother, M, who dies here, and the son who suffers because of it. It is, furthermore, literally reversed because we see Bond's back in the overview image, notably not showing his face, which is now probably completely messed up by tears. Skyfall chooses the Pieta imagery for this scene precisely since it is such a powerful moment in the Bond story. By using and reversing a Pieta, very ostentatiously if I may say so, it indicates the utter reversal in Bond's character and the depth of the Bond movies to come. However, although Skyfall reverses the Pieta image, mother to son, son to mother, it does remain close to the original. The Last of Us, that series does the real backflip. 1 Pieta, 2 Pieta, 3 Pieta, 4 Pietas. So, in the beginning episode of The Last of Us, we had two father-child Pietas. The grieving father Joel cradling his daughter Sarah, and the numb, no longer father Joel disposing of the nameless child. This is already a small reversal of the original Pieta because it's a father and a daughter instead of a mother and a son. Potato, potato. At the end of The Last of Us, there are several more Pietas. First, in episode 8, there's David carrying Ellie. David, the father, air quotes, of this Christian community, carries a captured Ellie. But this is no Pieta, although it has the triangle. It is a dark and vexing teaser for what's to come, harassing us with Father David, who turns out not to be a devout Christian, but a cannibalistic devotee of cordyceps, wanting to make Ellie his wife, not daughter. Then, in the last episodes, we have two more real Pietas, copying, mirroring the beginning. These are Ellie's mother giving birth to Ellie, sacrificing herself for her child because she gets infected while giving birth. This is called by story creator Craig Mazin World's Worst Pieta of Mother and Child in Vulture magazine. And the second, Joel carrying the unconscious Ellie out of the hospital at the very end of the story. As Lord Harry's lecture indicated, the Pieta is more about the Virgin Mary suffering than about Jesus Christ being dead. In The Last of Us first episode, called significantly When You're Lost in Darkness, the two contrasting Pietas show how Joel has hardened over the 20 years of cordyceps anarchy, pushing away the loss and sorrow for his daughter, becoming numb and thus able to handle dead children as discardable dead ballast. This is already some reversal of the original Pieta, but it's not yet completely subverting the image. It is still a grieving parent with a dead child in a sad love triangle. But as soon as Joel describes Ellie, of similar age to Sarah, as cargo in episode 4, we know that the main storyline will center around Joel and Ellie becoming like father and daughter to each other. And through that, Joel will be able to come to terms with his daughter's loss. Oh, okay, let's face it, we know this will be a storyline way before that, but then it at last is made official. The Antichrist and her father. Making Joel and Ellie the figures in The Last of Us Pieta play is immensely ironic. There couldn't be two persons more unlike Mary and Jesus Christ than those two. Joel is anything but a rookie. So linking him to the pious Virgin Mary is a superb move. It is hinted at repeatedly and made clear by Maria, the pregnant wife of Tommy, that Joel has done a lot of very dubious, if not horrible, things. No virgin, we will call Joel a veteran of the cordyceps era. And Ellie is no sweetheart either. She swears, does dangerous stuff, and knows a lot of things a 14-year-old should not. We could call her decidedly unholy. However, Ellie is more clearly linked to Jesus than Joel is to Mary. Ellie has, at least according to Marlene, the power to save humanity. Although bitten, she has remained unaffected and therefore might hold the answer to an antidote. Command's road trip through hordes of zombies. Pity the living, telling a story through images. The moment where Ellie gets her superpower, Ellie's birth, aka the world's worst Pièta, is a complete reversal of the original Pièta, and harks back to Mary with baby Jesus. It's a mother giving birth, dying, sacrificing herself for her child, while grieving the whole situation she's in. The giving birth alone in an abandoned house, the being attacked by an infected, and the being bitten and knowing she'll become a cordyceps zombie, and the whole state of the world as an additional bonus. In the filming of this scene, there's absolutely no serenity or purity or piety whatsoever. All stuff that the original Christian image, see Michelangelo, has in a way. Instead, it's gritty, harrowing, dirty, revolting. This Pieta is not a dead child and a grieving mother. It's a miraculously alive child and a dying and grieving mother, depleted and spent by her ordeal. Here, Ellie becomes Jesus for cordyceps-plagued humanity. Yes, we are now going to acknowledge the fact that Ellie means God is my light, or just light. Remember that first episode's title, When You're Lost in Darkness? It is followed by the last episode, Look for the Light. So, Joel brings Ellie to a hospital, where they'll try to find a cure to cordyceps with her help. But, minor detail, Ellie will die during the operation that will subtract her cordyceps immunity thingy. Of course, by that time Joel and Ellie have lived through so much together, not to mention a certain non-Christian cordyceps devotee with a tendency towards eating human flesh, that Joel cannot and will not let that happen. Ellie, like Jesus, sacrifices herself for humanity, but unlike Jesus, she is saved from death. Because Joel is no pious Virgin Mother Mary. He is a veteran of the cordyceps era and he knows how to shoot down a hospital full of fireflies. And then he enters the operating room. The imagery here is particularly good. Ellie is totally helpless, highlighted on the operating table like a scene from a painting, like a deathbed. Note that in the game the doctor exclaims "Sweet Jesus" when Joel enters with the gun. Ellie trickles blood when the drip needle is pulled out of her arm, just like Jesus, hanging from the cross helplessly, drips blood from his wounds. Joel gathers Ellie, the light of his world, in his arms and enters the elevator. The emotions on the once numb Joel's face are palpable. Mission succeeded. This is another reverse Pieta. While Jesus saves humankind by his death and is afterwards grieved by his mother, Ellie wants to, or could have, that's the question, saved humanity but is saved herself instead, all the while being grieved by both her own mother as by Joel, her father figure. Here's a real sad love triangle for you. Sarah's death, on the other hand, the Pieta with which we started this journey, saved no one, although the soldier thought it would, and was totally pointless. So, there we have it. 4 powerful and subverted Pietas showing the main story arc of The Last of Us. We have the savior of Cordyceps humanity, failing to save humanity while being saved herself. We could, by the way, question whether she could save humanity, since at the very start of episode 1 in the 1968 television show, Dr. Newman tells us there are no treatments for this, no preventatives, no cures. They don't exist. It's not even possible to make them. We already knew from the very start this quest to save humanity was doomed to fail. And then we have Joel, sweet veteran Joel, who went from having lost his daughter and his purpose in this god-awful shithole of a world to having another daughter to care for, Ellie. In the end, Ellie might not have been able to save the world. The Last of Us is too grim to allow that, note its title. She might not have saved the world, but she did save our hero.